Poštovani gosti, uvaženi predstavnici Akademske zajednice Crne Gore, velika mi je čast i zadovoljstvo da vas u ime Hipotekarne banke pozdravim i poželim vam dobrodošlicu na današnji skup. Današnji skup smo organizovali u saradnji sa počasnim konzulatom Crne Gore u Milanu i velika nam je čast i zadovoljstvo što je na današnji skup došao profesor Verona, rektor Univerziteta Bocconi iz Italije, i nadam se da će ponijeti dobre utiske sa današnjeg skupa, obzirom da je gospodin Verona prvi put u Crnoj Gori. Univerzitet Bocconi spada u red jednog od najprestižnijih univerziteta na svijetu. Prema nedavno objavljenoj rang listi univerziteta nalazi se na visokom 10. mjestu i mi se nadamo da će kroz komunikaciju i kontakte koje ostvari u Crnoj Gori sa predstavnicima akademske zajednice dobiti dodatni motiv da se ta saradnja između instituta Univerziteta Bocconi i Crne Gore dalje unaprijedi i intenzivira. Htio bih da iskoristim priliku i da vas informišemo o konekciji koja postoji između Hipotekarne banke i Univerziteta Bocconi. Naš počasni konzul u Crnoj Gori, gospođa Doli Predović, koja je zajednički sa nama suorganizator ovog skupa, je bivši profesor ekonomije na postdiplomskim studijama u Bocconiju, bivši član odbora direktora Hipotekarne banke i sada i počasni konzul Crne Gore u Milanu, i ovo je bila njena ideja i veliki doprinos da se ovaj skup danas održi. Još jedna stvar koja može biti zanimljiva, to jeste da Univerzitet Bocconi ima u zadnjih 20 godina dosta studenata iz Crne Gore, ali ono što je kuriozitet, prvi student koji je diplomirao iz Crne Gore na Bocconiju je gospodin Miljan Todorović, koji je većinski vlasnik Hipotekarne banke, tako da to je bilo davne 89. godine. Nakon njega bilo je dosta studenata, neki od njih su danas i prisutni ovdje. Još jedan kuriozitet vezano za saradnju Hipotekarne banke i Bocconija jeste da je gospodin Sigilfredo Montinari, koji je dugogodišnji predsjednik i aktuelni predsjednik odbora direktora Hipotekarne banke, također diplomirao na Bocconiju kao jedan od najuspješnijih studenata svoje generacije. Nadamo se da će gospodin Verona ponijeti dobre utiske iz Crne Gore, nadamo se da će uspostaviti komunikaciju i sa univerzitetima i u Crnoj Gori. Tu je prisutan i rektor Univerziteta Donja Gorica i njega posebno pozdravljam i želim vam svima uspješan rad. Da bi kvalitet današnjeg skupa bio takav kakav mi očekujemo, veliku zahvalnost dugujemo i profesorki Milici Pejanović-Đurišić, koja se ljubazno odazvala našem pozivu da učestvuje na ovoj panel diskusiji, i siguran sam da će nakon diskusije i njenog aktivnog učešća kvalitet poruka, informacija koje budete svi dobili uticati i na vaša buduća akademska opredeljenja. Na kraju bih sad zamolio, pozvao gospođu Doli Predović, našeg počasnog konzula, da nam se obrati. Ona će vam se obratiti na engleskom, tako da ukoliko su vam potrebne slušalice, možete ih zadužiti tu. Hvala vam svima i želim vam uspješan rad.
Dobar dan svima, and that's all I'll say in Montenegrin. So thank you, Esad. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, first of all, to Hipotekarna Banka for making this event possible. I want to thank all the friends and personality who have joined us today. There is a first row of incredible personalities. Thank you for being all here today. And it's really an honor to be here. I am here wearing basically 3 hats. So the first hat I'm wearing is the reason why I'm here, which is I'm the honorary consul of Montenegro, the proud honorary consul of Montenegro in Milano, in Italy, and I'm covering the regions of Lombardia, Piemonte, and Valle d'Aosta. So this is my most important hat why I'm here today. But I am also wearing other 2 hats. One is the fact that I have been for over 20 years a professor in Bocconi University, so it's my alma mater, and I grew up there personally and professionally. The third hat I am wearing is that of a researcher in the topics of higher education internationalization. So today I do research, I go to conferences talking about how to internationalize higher education worldwide and what are the benefits and the challenges on this path. So it's from this last hat I am wearing that I wanted to organize a conference which has found this wonderful title, which is Live Locally, Learn Globally. What does this refer to? Well, basically, it refers to the fact that we can call the last 25 years as the years of internationalization in higher education. It has been a very strong trend worldwide. So this has been characterized by a very strong global student mobility, by the expansion of branch campuses of university worldwide, by a huge increase in franchise and double degrees, and obviously by the pervasive use of the English language as means of instruction, of teaching, and of research. So these have been the trends. So let me very briefly tell you how we got to this today, why this happened. Well, you all know that in the Middle Ages, it was a very common sight on the roads of Europe, seeing scholars moving from one university city to the other to find knowledge, to find learning. And in those days, as we have today, they had one common language, which was Latin. This is one of the characteristics we have today. During the 18th and 19th century, this trend disappeared completely because of the emergence of nation states. So studying abroad was basically forbidden, and Latin was replaced by local languages. So when did modern higher education internationalization start? Well, it started after World War II with the Fulbright program. So the first impulse to internationalization, the modern internationalization, had not an educational rationale, but had a political rationale through the Fulbright program. I know Montenegro, I just read in the news last week, has improved its cooperation with the Fulbright program. So this was the first rationale that started modern internationalization in higher education. What happened next? Again, in the 80s, started the European program of exchange of research and education, the Erasmus program, but again the rationale was not educational. Again the rationale was different. It was for competitiveness, because Europe in those years was lagging behind in terms of competitiveness, behind the United States, behind Japan, and it had the need to develop the concept of European citizenship, and therefore started the exchange of students traveling around Europe to feel this European identity. In the 90s, again a shift in internationalization in higher education, and this time, again, it was still not educational, but it was economic. Why economic? Well, recruiting of international students was a way for university to gain money, because the fees in many countries for international students are higher than for domestic students. What else happened in the 90s? The emergence of big conglomerates of for-profit private higher education universities. So there are conglomerates like a very big American company called Laureate, which owns more than 80, 90 universities worldwide, so for profit. Again, the expansion of branch campuses, the huge proliferation of double degrees, triple degrees, whatever number of degrees have been put together in education. And we come now, after this brief historical excursus, to today. What's going on today? Well, there has been a lot of research that has proved that the skills and competencies developed by students who have traveled, who have had international experiences of studying abroad, of work abroad, so the competencies they developed through these experiences are the competencies that employers want graduates to have. So this is the basic point of internationalization today, and it has to do with employability. Universities today have to create globally employable graduates, and therefore, at last, the focus of internationalization is now on an educational rationale, and therefore on the learning outcome of the students who are attending the university. So now we have added all these rationales, and we are where we are today. The latest trends, but I'm talking about what's going on in the last few weeks, is a shift in how this internationalization will be implemented in higher education. So up to just a few years ago, internationalization was basically about incoming and outgoing students, incoming and outgoing academics going to do research projects abroad. So it was basically internationalization based on the mobility, we can call it the mobility of a minority of students. What is happening today is that the focus is instead on developing also in the majority of students, those who stay at home, the same skills that you can gain through traveling abroad. And this is the latest trend in internationalization called internationalization at home and internationalization of the curriculum in the country where you live. And this is how we reconnect here. So, first of all, I want to again welcome my friend, rector of Bocconi University, Gian Mario Verona, whom is an example. Bocconi is today an example of all this process that I have just described and of how to achieve internationalization at home. And again, I will tell you a few pillars on how this happened in Bocconi. So Bocconi, 30 years ago, was the best Italian university, but it was strongly domestic and local. Okay, so it was the best Italian university. We were all there. Everything was in Italian. Our professors were amazing people, but well known in Italy, not abroad. What happened in these last 30 years and allowed Bocconi, I don't know if you, I'm sure you all have read the news that Bocconi is now number 10 worldwide based on a ranking that came out last week. So number 10 worldwide, after just Harvard, MIT, and really the top university, and Bocconi is number 10. How did it get there? 3 pillars, basically. One pillar is never move away from what university is for. What is the task of a university? The task of a university is basically to create knowledge and innovation through research. This is what creates a university, okay? Creating knowledge through research and innovation. So Bocconi really strongly worked on these aspects. Therefore, today in Bocconi, the faculty, the researchers who build up Bocconi's faculty are well-known researchers worldwide, are their research papers, their articles, their research is published in the most important international journals in the field of study. And a lot of faculty members also sit on the scientific boards of the same journals. So this is, in my opinion, I don't know, I'm sure that during the panel you have an occasion, both Professor Milovic and Verona, to discuss about this. This is my opinion. I think this is the pillar which will drive internationalization of every university research. So today, Bocconi's faculty is very international, and it's able to attract international researchers. Second pillar is rankings. I'll talk a little bit about rankings. Rankings are a very difficult process for a university. Rankings go, for example, before entering a ranking, you need to have some accreditation by some international bodies. And for Bocconi, it was, I lived through one of these very difficult accreditation processes. It has a deep organizational impact. You have to change the organization from the basic things. It's not only about having a faculty, academic faculty that publishes around. It means changing the design and the format of the syllabus of each and every single course. It means qualification of the staff. It means assessment of faculty and student done in a certain way. And it goes all the way down to the simplest services that are given to the students. It is a very difficult process, as I said, very traumatic for organizations, because this amount of change in an organization is very traumatic. But how did Bocconi achieve this? It achieved this through a very strong commitment from the top, from the governing bodies, because in the organization nobody wants change. So only if the governing bodies push and support the organization to achieve this change, it happens, and it was worldwide. Third pillar of how Bocconi achieved the position it has today, again, in my opinion, is the fact that never in Bocconi was English seen as a goal of internationalization. It's always been a tool. Giving a course in English is not being international. I mean, you can't even think of being international if your courses are not in English. So that's not internationalization, that's simply a tool. So today, Bocconi, one of the biggest problems Bocconi had in the beginning of the 90s, where I started working there, we had long discussions about how to attract international students, because in those days, Bocconi students wanted to go abroad to study, but not very many from the US or Ivy Leagues wanted to come to study in Bocconi. So how can you base an exchange if nobody wants to come to your university? Today, Bocconi is the most sought after European destination by Ivy League students, and it happened in only less than 30 years. We have a lot of students from Harvard. I'm saying we, even if I'm not anymore, but I feel part of it. Okay, students coming from Harvard, from the top university in the US. So this is about Bocconi and how it achieved its position. So today, Bocconi is international not because the courses are taught in English, not because many students go abroad to study and work. It's international because even if, as a student, you come to Milano and never leave the Bocconi campus, and you live all your academic experience as a student in Bocconi, you graduate as a global citizen, able to work and live in the global society, because the campus is today an international campus. That is, again, what internationalization is about, bringing the internationalization within your home campus. Internationalization of the curriculum and of everything that's happening at home. I won't take much of your time anymore, just a few final remarks on how I think, what I see in Montenegro on this topic. I see that Montenegro is in a great position to achieve results of internationalization like Bocconi has. Why? Because, first of all, you have an amazing youth. So the youth in education, in internationalization, it's what drives the trend, the process. So people in Montenegro all speak English, so that's obviously not a goal, as we said, but if people don't speak English, it might still be a problem to achieve internationalization. The second thing I see in Montenegro, and that might be the biggest challenge, is to work towards rankings. Rankings today are a different thing. Today, rankings are basically league tables, not only of world-class university, but also of their host nations. Okay? So it's not so much a way of helping students make their choice where to go and study, but it is as much a geopolitical positioning of the institutions and the country. So Italy today is very proud to say, we have the 10th university worldwide. So Italy is using, we have the ambassador here, Eccellenza. Aren't you proud, as representative of Italy, that you have the 10th worldwide rank, and that's because of Bocconi. and it gives an important impact on the country itself. Okay, so that's, I think, something that Montenegro can look forward to. I know, I'm not like the biggest expert, but I know that in Russia there has been an incredible initiative called the Academic Excellence Initiative 5100. It has been implemented by a governmental decree in 2013, and their aim was to have by 2020 5 universities in the top 100 ranked. It's 2010, in the last week rankings we were talking about, Russia has already 3 of these 5 universities, so they are achieving the goal. But it has been a very important effort of institutions, governments, everybody, because as I said, these changes are very traumatic for institutions. And then the last thing, which I think really puts Montenegro in an incredibly positive situation to achieve this internationalization, is the strength of the research that's going on. We have Professor Pejanovic, Professoressa, I don't know how you say it, who we asked, and thank you, you accepted our invitation, represent how through international sound research you can achieve goals. So I also know the colleagues from the Faculty of Economics of the State University. Also, you have internationally published papers. I'm referring only to these two because I know you. I'm sure there are other researchers here who have done amazing things as well. So I think that this is really the motor that will drive Montenegro to become a country with internationally ranked university and achieve internationalization even if you stay in Montenegro. I hope I didn't take too much of your time. Thank you. And
Okay, good morning. It's an honor to be here on this stage and present this prestigious event here in Podgorica. I'm really happy to see so many young people here, students, because this event is mainly about you. It's about your choices of today and your choices of the future. I am really happy that in this pursuit will be helped by 2 prestigious panelists. Actually, the landscape, the future landscape is changing, and it's changing importantly. The events of today are influencing this future landscape, and these events, among other things, are new technologies, such as artificial intelligence, important advancement in robotics, Internet of Things, blockchain technologies. All this is going to impact the future landscape. But there's even one more thing which is very important, the death of distances. Things occurring at the same time on the global and local level, melting. The global and local level are melting among each other, creating a huge, unique market of human resources, global market of human resources, where knowledge and skills are circulating freely. What can we do right now? What can you do right now to prepare to this future landscape? What can you do to see beyond the horizon and understand what is going on and how to navigate the seas of tomorrow? Our pathfinders in this pursuit today will be our 2 panelists. First of them served as Minister of Defense in the government of Montenegro. She was the first ambassador of independent Montenegro to France, Monaco, and UNESCO, ambassador of the State Union, Serbia and Montenegro, to Belgium and Luxembourg, member of the Parliament of Montenegro, and was elected member of the state presidency at the first democratic elections. She holds a PhD in telecommunication engineering and is a full professor in telecommunications and wireless communications at the Faculty of Electrical Engineering, University of Montenegro. The result of her scientific contribution is described in over 200 scientific papers in international journals and at international conferences. Now, her main research focuses on wireless technologies, 5G networks, Internet of Things, cooperative and energy efficient transmission techniques, ICT trends, and so on. She also covered the role of the president of the board of Telekom Montenegro, the president of the board of First Montenegrin Internet Provider, and after all that, there is one dark spot in her biography that I must disclose here. Unfortunately, I must admit, well, she's a fan of Juventus. Please welcome on this stage Professor Milica Pejanović-Đurišić. He's born in Milan and holds a degree in business administration from, you can imagine, Bocconi University, and also a PhD from Bocconi University in business administration and management. He's been a visiting scholar at the Sloan School of Management at the prestigious MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He was also the visiting professor at the Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth College. Since 2016, is the rector of Bocconi University, professor of management and former chair of market innovation, program chair at the competitive strategy division of the Strategic Management Society, editor of the journal Strategic Organization, and member of editorial boards of Strategic Management Journal, Journal of Management, and Journal of Management Studies. Before deciding to become a university professor, he wanted to be a rock musician. And actually, he thinks of his work right now as a rock musician. You write your melodies, you write your research, you present it across the globe as in rock concerts, and then at the end you get published as musicians do with their CDs. He plays the guitar, and he plays drums, and he wants to play to learn to play the piano. He reads Marvel comics, and I'm really, really happy to have here on this stage Professor Gianmario Verona, il magnifico rettore della Bocconi. Okay, now let's start. And let's start with Professor Pejanović. You had a close view from your biography. We can understand that you had a close view from both local and global perspective. As a scholar, as an academic, as ambassador, you've seen the international landscape, and obviously you can see the local Montenegrin landscape. What are the most important things the local students, young people here, should bear in mind in order to cope with the challenges of immediate future?
Well, let me first thank to Hipotekarna Banka and Madame Predović for the initiative. I do believe that the discussions like that are more than needed in our environment. There is a lot of things we could be contributing by exchanging, by hearing the others, by listening to the other experiences. And actually, as you said, through my own experience, I did live as someone who has been a part of a global community from the late 80s or even before that. And maybe it's because of the area and the sector I'm working in. You do know that I'm working in ICT, more precisely in telecommunications engineering, and that is something which is global. I remember the time when I started my research. It was, I don't say how many decades ago, but at that time the main paradigm we did have in front of us was to find solutions through our research for that communication paradigm, which will be meaning communication anywhere with anyone at any time. At that time, it was like a fantasy. Nowadays, for years now, we are living that. And again, there was a point when we asked ourselves, where we go next? And we found where we're going next. And now we are talking about this, say, third wave of information revolution. We passed the first one, where we were dealing with different infrastructures. Then we came to the second one, where we were dealing with different applications for that infrastructures. Now we are in the third one, which is very much marked with the innovation, where we are going with everything we did before, infrastructures, applications, towards the areas which are, among other things, very much regulated. It's health, it's it's transport, it's energy, it's all other sectors of human activities where we are going to implement what we were working on. And there, I do believe that whatever we are doing, in whatever area we are working on, we've got nowadays, and for the immediate future, to have in front of us something as a paradigm which is completely marked with innovation. It's not only innovation in startups. It's not only what Steve Jobs did at the time or Elon Musk is doing nowadays. It's innovation which could be brought in every sense and in everything we are doing.
Permeating everything. Permeating everything.
Yeah, but in that sense, we do need to adapt ourselves. That is something I'm working with my students for years now. How to, in a sense, liberate their minds, liberate their imagination, to come to the new solution. Because, of course, when we are talking about the education nowadays, we are not talking about the education it was at our times, where we did need a huge amount of knowledge. Now, Google knows much more than we do, so we don't need that. But we do need the competencies and skills to know how to use our knowledge, when to use, what to use, and then to complement that with the skills which are at one end, of course, the skills of creative thinking. And that is something where we've got to have imagination, have the audience, have the courage, and be ready to take the risks. On the other side, of course, probably the young people who are trying to get the jobs, and more, I do know that they go globally, know when they are filling those applications for different jobs. They're asking them for this formal education, but they ask you also for some skills and competencies which I would more call character qualities, where they want to know what are your leadership skills, what are your skills in communication, how resilient you are in front of the failure. And these are the things that we've got to take into account when we educate young people. Here in Montenegro, of course, what we do need is, I would say, more stable education system. Of course, we do need reforms, and we are reforming ourselves all the time, but there got to be a kind of a stop in that process and a more evolutive approach, so that the all reforms we are doing should be sensed as an ownership of the people who are the pillars of the process. Of course, there is that approach which is top-down, and it's always necessary. I mean, regulation is something which is done in that manner. But on the other side, if you don't have the people who are the pillars in that process, you did nothing, and you won't be doing anything. And from that point, I think we do need a much better approach when we are talking about, especially when it's about the first phases in education, high school, and then it comes the university education. So still a long road to go, and I believe that occasions like this where we could hear the young people and hear their experiences would be very valuable. On the other side, I might stop there. I do know that when it comes to internationalization, there is a lot of young people who are going abroad and who are very eager to come back. And I do think that we as a community are not using that opportunities created in that way in the right manner. So they are the real potential for this country as well. And somehow talking with a lot of them, I've got the impression that they are lacking these possibilities to show what they learned, what they contribute. So very, very often they sent as being a side of the processes which are going on. And there is something where we've got to do much more as a people who are in education, who are having other responsibilities. With initiatives like that, I'm sure that they would be willing to share their experiences in a much effective way.
To step in, yes. Okay, thank you very much. Professor Verona, there's a lot of young people here. Some of them are alumni of Bocconi, but most of them are students right now, and I suppose they would be very much happy to be at your universities, to study at Bocconi, but some of them might, for some of them might be possible, for some of them might not. What if they cannot reach Bocconi? What is your advice? If They are staying here in Montenegro, and they are at the local level, looking, keeping their eyes open. But what if they cannot reach important central stages such as Bocconi?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. Thanks to Consul General Professor Predovic who contacted me, and thanks to Hipotekarne Banke for organizing this beautiful panel. It's a real privilege for me to be here. I'm traveling a lot in these days, and I have the chance to re-nurture the community of alumni of Bocconi University, which are spread around the world. And when I received this invitation, I was so proud and happy because in my experience, having checked the alumni of Bocconi, they're successful and they're extremely vibrant, and so it's a great pleasure to be here today. Well, I think that the title of the workshop is really perfect because we are really living the era of access, as they say, the age of access. So a moment in which, thanks to the internet and the digital revolution, clearly we can have, through our tools, our smartphones, our computers, we can have the world in the house. So first of all, I would say, never give up following your dream. And your dream might be staying here, doing whatever you like. But in general, at my times, I remember when I studied my bachelor in 1988, you did not have information about different universities. So it was very hard to do application and to understand what you should do in order to be submitted in some of these universities. Now we are living in a wonderful age in which information, again, is in your pocket. And so I think it's very important that each of you tries to pursue your dream. And again, I don't want to advertise Bocconi today too much, but given the predecessors that you have, there are good chances that you may get in also at Bocconi. Speaking about those that do not want to, go abroad and want to stay here, again, I think that the beauty of this time is that you can really learn a lot locally. I understand you have beautiful universities in Montenegro, and so this is something very important. And particularly if you follow the advice that was just provided by the professor, so to try to nurture momentum around different fields, around research, like it was said before, because this is really the first pillar in order to make a change in the game. So to try to really produce knowledge. So we are in a moment in which you can have the most beautiful massive online open course on each topic, and you can watch it yourself at home without the need to go to the university. University has to change the logic of providing service. I like to use this metaphor. I used to say that in the past, as universities, we were simply knowledge translator because at my times, textbooks were impossible to understand. And so the professors was there to try to make you understand the things that you were trying to read at home, but you did not understand. And today is exactly the opposite because you have beautiful lessons on your computer. You can check from, in my field, Michael Porter to Clayton Christensen, the big gurus of strategy and innovation that tell you exactly what you should do in terms of strategy and what you should do in terms of innovation. So what universities should do today is to really become a skill development lab. They have to become a skill-making machine that is super customized on the characteristics of their students, and they have to try really to start from this knowledge, which is distributed and diffused all over the world and through the computers, into something which crafts the curricula of students to make them stronger and talented in order to achieve their goals. So again, never forget to pursue your dream, because what matters in life is happiness. Even economists, economists have always thought that the most important thing is profit. In the last 20 years, I've learned that the most important thing for people is happiness. In fact, last few Nobel Prizes in economics, are behavioral economists, so are psychologists that talk about economics. So in my view, it's very important that each of you will pursue your own dreams. But then, in general, try to do something that is consistent with your competence, with your passion. And, you can do a lot of things locally, because really today, knowledge is around the corner.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Professor Verona. Okay, knowledge is around the corner. And the differences between what we used to call the developed and the underdeveloped world are changing. The Asia especially is rising. There is a lot of Asian, especially Chinese university getting on top of international rankings. And a lot of immigrants coming from Asia, but not only, are coming in the Western world with important degrees, with important skills and important knowledge. And the human resources market is becoming global. For a local student here in Montenegro, it seems an overwhelming pressure. It might seem something that is impacting here the possibility, in an important way, impacting the possibility to get the job, to get the career, to develop the career here in Montenegro, but even abroad. What is the advice for local students? What is the advice for people living here in Montenegro, young people living here in Montenegro? How can they cope with this global competitive landscape?
That's for me.
That's for you, yes.
Well, partly we already talked about that. I mean, first of all, I do believe that nowadays we all should be feeling as a part of global whatever, the labor market as well. So I do know that there is, especially recently, a number of discussions on the issues you mentioned, like having a huge number of migrants all over the places in Europe, not here in Montenegro. Maybe there is a reason for that, which is not very fortunate. But on the other side, I don't believe that this should be considered as something which is automatically a threat for the young people. There is a number of studies showing that, of course, the level of unemployment is very high. I mean, higher than all this period after the Second World War in Europe and all over the, not globally, but I mean in what we consider as a Western society. But on the other side, the studies are also showing that the employers are not finding the right people to fill the vacancies they are having, and that percentage might be even higher than the first one. So that means that there is some kind of discrepancy in what we are having as a final product, I would say, from the university and what are the needs of the labor market today. There is a number also of controversies and discussions going on, especially in Europe, about the nature of the education and especially of higher education, whether actually for the time being we should be further on investing in academic university education or more vocational education should be present as well. So I would say that generally it's not possible to give a kind of a straight advice or a response we should be doing like this. We should be doing in a manner that will open for the young people more chances to adapt themselves to whatever is coming in 10, 20 years. Because whatever we do now, we could be almost certain that in 20 years it will be different. So even if we are talking, for example, about these ICT skills, I wouldn't recommend to anyone now to go specifically in something very, very specialized. It's much better to have that broader understanding, to have that ability to learn by yourself, to have that ability to apply that what you know to some unfamiliar problems, to create a solution, to make connections between different facts and details. So this is the environment where you could build yourself in a manner to be able to respond whatever comes in 10 or 20 years. So that is the right approach, actually, in whatever sector we are talking about. So that is something which I'm trying to learn my students also, and I'm not that very happy, I've got to be quite honest, when I'm signing recommendations for them to go abroad. That's not something I believe it's my duty here. I'm much more happy when I manage to get the funding to persuade some of them who are abroad, who prove themselves abroad, to come back to Montenegro. So I've got to tell you that I'm having certain experience. It's not easy. It's not easy for themselves as well after years spent there in the environments which are, you can imagine from our field, so challenging. They are having laboratories, they are having all this industry cooperation, which is great, to come here again and try developing further with us what we are doing. But we are managing. There are people like that. They are working at our faculty at this very moment, and that is something I'm very proud of. So from that point, what I want to send as a message is that each of us is having a certain responsibility. Even the young people who are here. They have always that possibility to come to us, so we'll do together what they think might be helpful for that. I do know also a number of very good examples of the people who, young people, who were having certain ideas, and we help them to go forward and do something here in Montenegro. And of course then prove themselves somewhere else, but having a base here, having a people they know, knowing how the environment is operating is making them easier to position themselves and further develop and then be ready to, of course, play that global game, which is played even here.
Of course,
so
yeah.
I'm very much in favor of those who are advocating the fact that we are all working in the global environment, whatever we are doing, research and development, which of course is of that kind, but the other things as well. So from that point, I do believe that there is a lot of space for the young people here and the others at our universities. Say at the biggest university there is, which is University of Montenegro, it's 20,000 young people who are there. So it is the real potential for this country.
Amazing. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Well, a similar question for you also, Professor Verona. A lot of young people living in Montenegro are working for international companies abroad. A lot of Montenegrin companies rely on services provided by Indian, Italian, American companies. Right now, it's happening right now. This is what I've mentioned at the beginning, a death of distances. But this death of distances requires a different strategic approach, and it requires from all of us, but especially from young people, from students, from those entering the labor market right now. You're a strategy professor. What's the strategy?
Well, this is $1 million question, as they say, or billion, like we should say today, because million is worth less than in the past. So basically, it's clearly a competitive world, right? So, and again, if we think and look back about what happened in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, clearly the world was much less competitive and was characterized by many barriers, which, by the way, are, in a way, regrowing in these days.
Emerging again, yes.
Who knows what the future will provide, but this is something for sure that in these days, particularly if you work for multinationals, and if you aim to work there, there is general competition, which is harsh. And so, in general, I think that it's very important that you try to differentiate, your growth, your pattern, your CV in a way that makes, the human resource manager, when he or she sees is the ha-ha effect, right? And so what is the ha-ha effect? So some competencies are clearly the fundamentals. And so if you aim for a specific job, again, in these days, there are always some Indians, some Chinese, some other continental person that can be extremely vertical in that competence, and so you should be good enough. Sometimes we are appreciated in the broad Mediterranean area because we are well-rounded, and so this is something that people typically take into account. And so I believe that it is a comparative advantage that will last, of course, forever. But what you have to try to do also is to put some cherries on your CV. So basically, in my view, for example, in these days, I agree with the fact that it's very hard to predict what's going on, but clearly, I keep saying that coding is the new English. So knowing English for my generation was clearly very important. And if you did not know English, it was very hard to be hired by a multinational company. I remember at the time in 92, 93, when I graduated and I started my personal decisions, I then decided to stay because I liked very much, studying. I had analytical skills. I didn't want to work for companies, but I remember to make, these interviews for companies, and all of a sudden, the interviewee changed completely the language into France or into English while I was interviewing you. And so, of course, if you did not know these languages, it was a big problem. Today, English is something that we consider as a given. I think that having good analytical skills for most of the job in most of the industries, in multinational companies, have to do with data. And so you can't play with data. So this doesn't mean to become a computer scientist, although in these days computer scientists are super well paid, and so good for them. But in general, it's crucial if you want to go in the world of finance, if you want to go in the world of marketing, if you want to go in general in the world of strategy and consulting, to really be good enough in interpreting data. And interpreting data means to have the ABC of coding. So this is something that probably in 10 years from now will no more be a competitive advantage, but for sure in this day it is. And that's the reason why, for example, at Bocconi, I decided to have this draconian decision of imposing in the first year of our bachelor program to all the students 8 credits in coding. So they have to take 64 hours with a pass or fail exam in one of the languages of coding, which is the most used, which is Python. And so I think this is something for them very, very important. The other thing is to become, and this is something that, you know, the future of the enterprise is characterized exactly by innovation. So this is something that I fully agree with. So innovation will be more and more important because it is about a world in which machines will become more important and humans will become even better in trying to reorganize the works of the machines. And so this means to introduce a lot of innovations in organizations will be much flatter than they are today. And so another fundamental skill, which it's very hard to learn, by the way, it's, they call it leadership, but leadership for some people, you know, is about being a leader, being, you know, a strong vertical leader, but this is not the case, because leaders of big, you know, modern organizations are people that have empathy, that are good to work in teams, that can take all the best energy out of their team players, so the people that are around them, people that are very good in communicating, people that are very good in using these PowerPoint slides and presenting something which, again, is something that you have to practice yourself. So these things are very hard to teach, right? Because most of the universities have these courses in human resource management in which they tell you the theory of how you should communicate, how you should engage in teamwork, and so on and so forth. I think that it is crucial to do things, and so for those who are engaged in universities like myself, I impose these in the courses. So I impose my students to do, you know, many stages during their bachelor, to do many, you know, activity with companies during their bachelor, in addition to teach them how to do these things. But in general, I think it's very important that people start working. We have this tradition in Europe in which you start working you know, after university, later on. But even, you know, to be a waiter for sometimes during the summer, I think it's a crucial activity to understand the world around you. And these things Americans have learned it many years ago, and that's the reason why they're so good in many jobs at the organizational level. And so I keep pushing, and if I think about my kids that are still very young, you know, they will have a hell in my house because I will force them to do many things, because I think these are the kind of things which are very important. So to wrap up, be competent. You can't work, you know, in an engineering company in computer science if you're not a good computer scientist, because otherwise, you know, there will be people better than you. So according to the jobs, there are competencies that today you have to develop. But there is this, I give you this metaphor we use in actually this analogy. It's the T-shape, we call it, in the human resource management field. So you have to be vertical enough in the field that you like and in which you want to put yourself into discussion. But you have also to have the bar of the T, which means to be, you know, full-rounded in the way you interact with people, in the way you do things with people, in the way you engage, you know, suppliers, customers, and so on and so forth. This is more and more crucial, and this is something that it's very important to develop as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Professor Đurišić, Pejanović, I understand that the ICT, and we all of us know it, is a global knowledge. It's distributed. The knowledge in ICT is distributed, not symmetrically, but globally. And in this situation, you're producing, we know that it's been years, you're producing competitive expert that can cope with challenges on international level in international institutions. Unlike, I must admit, unlike many other academic areas in Montenegro. How do you manage? What is the recipe? What is the main part of this strategy?
Well, maybe I'm not the right person to comment on that, but somehow for myself, I have an explanation that maybe it's due again to the area as such, and maybe also due to the environment we are working on, and due to the past developments we were having here in Montenegro. So always I'm thinking, say, about my colleagues which are from the Faculty of Economy or Faculty of Law, which were at the time when I was going globally. They've been working on things very specific for the society of ours at that time. So they did have a kind of a trouble further on to adapt new values, new paradigm, new way of thinking, and probably they have lost a certain time in doing that. So we've got to be aware of these circumstances which the legacy one we are still having somewhere present. But on the other side, Madam Predović was talking about this very important pillar of internationalization, which is university rankings. That is something we are definitely and completely missing here in Montenegro. And as she noted very rightly, we can't achieve results there by individual efforts. Individual efforts are all pieces in that whole mosaic, which is called the global position of a certain university or the whole sector of higher education, research and development of the state. So from that point, I also do know the experiences of some other countries who were taken that as a state project, where all stakeholders in the country were involved in achieving the goal they had for themselves. And I do believe that in Montenegro we also do need to occupy ourselves with that in a more serious way. Individual efforts, I repeat once more, are necessary but are not sufficient. On the other side, something I missed to mention before is also a kind of handicap we are having here in Montenegro when it comes to young people, when it comes to us who are working with them either in education or research and development, is that insufficiently developed links between the education and industry, business, whatever you call it. Without that, I mean, it's impossible. I will tell you an anecdote as well. I'm having so much things, so maybe it's not okay, but I let myself. I remember when I started my PhD, it was 1984. And I left for Birmingham in United Kingdom to work there. And I stand in front of my professor saying, I'm going to work on this. He said, why? I said, well, I think there is a potential there for PhD. And he said, how do you know? Well, I don't know, but somehow I suppose. And he said, well, I can't comment on that. I don't know. And I was completely puzzled. I said, how you don't know? He said, you know, we are not working in research like that. We are having on the other side our partners who are different stakeholders who come to us and say, you know, we have this problem. Can you solve it? So that was my experience from 1984. Is it different here in Montenegro nowadays? I believe it's not. So that is where I would like to use this opportunity as well to encourage our friends and colleagues who are in businesses, in different industries around, to turn their heads towards the people who are working in education, towards professors, young people, and work with them in synergy. That is the only way how we can produce something new here.
Thank you very much. Please an applause for this. Thank you very much.
May I jump in to echo what you just said with the experience of Bocconi University that was very well represented before by Professor Predović. So basically, you know, in strategy, we have, in the language of strategy, we have this word that has been abused in these days, but it's, I think, very effective. So let me use it for one more time, which is ecosystem. So the strength of the education system, you don't play alone, right? So everything is part of, no company is an island and no university is an island. We play in a network. And the network of ecosystem, which is the name of the game today, is to really have a win-win solutions for different stakeholders. And what you just said is crucial. And again, Bocconi has been good enough to improve, but it has grown with the ecosystem of Milan. And so before you were speaking about Italy, and apologies, Ambassador, you know, Italy is the most beautiful country in the world, of course, and apologize also for the rest of the audience. I believe that Italy is really the most beautiful country in the world, but Italy is very complicated, and the reputation of Italy outside Italy is not that great, particularly in these days. Instead, Milan is huge. It's huge in the sense that everybody loves Milan for some reasons. Because Milan in the last 30 years have made an impressive turnaround in terms of not only reputation, or in terms of energy. So in the past, you know, most of the industrial district will relate it to the political part were in Rome. Now they're in Milan, the financial district in Milan, the fashion and design, of course, in Milan because it was born in Milan. But Milan is full of energy and full of beautiful things and services that you can get. So again, it's a teamwork. It's not about universities only. It's about the stakeholders of universities, which are companies, which are alumni. And in general, I think that you guys, you know, are for sure good enough to do it. And also, the size of Montenegro is good enough to not have the complexity of the coordination costs typical of many countries, which are huge, and it's very hard to coordinate the different resources. And if I may also mention a couple of practical things that were extremely useful. In the case of Bocconi, for example, we started with, this is exactly what was said before, to having back the best Italians in leading schools in the world, right? And so you need to provide incentives for them to be back, because they clearly sometimes they want to be back in their own country, but if you are a professor at Stanford, it's very hard for you to go back to Milan, because you have a number of things, reputation costs and so on and so forth. So providing incentives is very important for having the right people on board in the country, and particularly in the university. And again, if I may, one policy that in Italy has been extremely powerful in doing this, I don't know if there is something similar here in Montenegro, has been this brain gain incentive system at the national level. And so basically, if you've been abroad for a number of years, at least it's at least 3 years, and you've had a successful path of career abroad, so you receive major fiscal incentives for 4 years when you come back. So this has become an incredible incentive to have people coming from beautiful schools, beautiful companies, back to the area of Milan. Again, I don't want to suggest anything, but in Italy this works
but let's hear
a lot,
it.
a lot.
Thank you very much.
For the beginning, it would be good if we can manage to have some fiscal incentives for the young people who are starting their startups in Montenegro.
No, sure, this is another
But
thing. Sure.
It's also something we've got to work on, I believe, very soon, yeah.
Okay, we're talking about people that been abroad, that attended important and expensive universities, and we're talking to the people that are living here, that some of them might be struggling economically and cannot afford such things. We've also mentioned that at the international level, mainly thanks to BRICS countries, the differences are getting smaller. But on the internal level, the differences are getting bigger. The Gini, the internal Gini, is growing, and the wealth is even more asymmetrically distributed right now. Are we risking to have a future where there will be a 1% or something of people closed in their ivory tower, where the wealth allows them to access important and exclusive educational resources, and the rest of the world that cannot raise the bar and enter that tower? Is that the risk of the future?
Well, for sure, more than a risk is a political fact. Because what we are seeing in these days in many parts of the world is the rise of populism, which is surfing this divide. So there is this beautiful book by an economist, a French economist, Thomas Piketty, about Das Kapital in the 21st century that really provided the first very clear fact about this growing divide in the population incomes. And so that for sure is a fact. So I'm only a professor of strategy, so I'm unable to answer such a big question, but it's a crucial element to deal with. And let me only give you my personal hope, which is the thing I'm struggling every single day for, which is what we call the Z generation, the Generation Z, which is the people born between 1998 and 2010, which are the students that we have. Some of them are the students that we have at the university. And these are the guys that will have to change the way things are. And that's the reason why we should make them also conscious of the problems that this divide is producing. And I think that the Z generation is probably the most conscious of all, right? Because they take into account a lot of things that past generations did not consider at all. And so in my view, they are the seeds to make the society better than it is in some parts of the world in these days. And they are a global generation. They are independently on the barriers and independently also on the income. They tend to have a view of the world which I personally think is way more similar than it was in the previous generation. So I trust a lot in them. And again, as universities, we should try to put emphasis all the times on these topics. And again, the divide is something that was not taught in macroeconomics. Now it's one of the first topics. So microeconomics was about supply and demand period. Now it's about geopolitics. So I think that by putting knowledge into this, we'll have solution coming up hopefully in the future also from these guys. And of course, if there are people in the world that can provide a solution tomorrow morning, it would be fantastic. But what I'm seeing also from the political election in Italy is that clearly, Italy is breaking down in two. If you check the colors of the parties, it's pretty amazing because all the central south is yellow, which means the Five Stars movements, and all the northern part is blue with some red, which means either center right or center left. And Five Star movements, and I'm not saying anything against or in favor of them, but clearly are a movement. They're not a party that is pretty much populist. And so, like Donald Trump in the US, like what happened in the Brexit, parties in UK, they are surfing this moment, which goes back to your question.
Thank you very much. I would have a lot of other questions for our panelists here, but right now I think that it's time to give space to our guests here, to our students, in order to ask questions. How are we going to manage? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Jeden.
It's okay?
Non si sente bene, o si sente bene? Prima di tutto...
I think that you should ask your question in Montenegrin or in Italian because of the translation. Or in English. Sorry.
Signor ambasciatore di Monaco, lei è qui per difendere l'italiano. Io voglio parlare nella lingua italiana.
Okay, I'll
se vi piace, se non vi piace,
okay,
non faccio nulla.
Okay.
Ecco, prima di tutto vorrei introdurmi. Io sono Predrag Vujović da Podgorica. Nel 2001 ho fatto una ricerca nell'economia digitale nella Bocconi di Milano, che poi quando sono ritornato in Montenegro è distrutta. Direi come, ma non voglio disturbare questo convegno di questo. Ecco, voglio salutare prima di tutto il magnifico rettore della Bocconi. È il mio gran piacere che lui sia qui in Montenegro per la prima volta, ma anche dal 1979, signor di Monaco, non abbiamo visto il Presidente della Repubblica. L'ultimo Presidente della Repubblica qui in Montenegro, per quanto io lo so, era Sandro Pertini, una persona molto amata dagli italiani.
E anche dai montenegrini.
Sì, sì, abbastanza.
Okay,
Ecco,
I need to translate all this, so please be short, be concise. Okay, I'll
posso
translate everything,
continuare?
just go on. And
io voglio fare un commento solo, che signora Pejanović, voi dovete spiegare alla popolazione studentesca qui in Montenegro
maybe
che
Professor Pejanović,
okay.
Okay, you can understand in Italian? Okay.
ok, che dopo avranno finito gli studi, che dovranno essere appartenenti, che dovranno diventare membri di un partito politico, un partito democratico dei socialisti, meglio dire comunisti. Lei è un'altissima rappresentante di questo partito politico. È meglio spiegare la realtà com'è in Montenegro. La realtà che avete detto oggi non è vera, proprio. Ecco, dico molto sinceramente.
This is the question.
Secondo,
Okay.
Poi qui a Montenegro anche le formiche fanno la politica.
Formiche.
Formiche, sì, formiche. La mia ricerca sull'impatto delle infrastrutture e telecomunicazioni sviluppata alla Bocconi era distrutta perché mi hanno rubato il mio lavoro nella Telecom montenegrina.
Ok, possiamo andare molto più velocemente perché vogliamo dare spazio per altri anche per le domande, grazie.
Non c'è nessun problema. Signora Pejanović, durante la sua presidenza come presidente del Consiglio dell'amministrazione della Telecom, non abbiamo avuto, signor Verona, non abbiamo avuto un giorno di training sul posto di lavoro. Ecco,
Benissimo, grazie. Questo già entra nelle risorse umane della Telecom, che è un tema specifico. La ringrazio, daremo la possibilità. Grazie mille, dobbiamo dare spazio ad altri per le domande. Ci sono altri che vogliono fare le domande?
Mercato di lavoro, grazie Radoje, grazie molto.
Grazie mille.
Non c'è nessun
Ci sono altre domande che magari ne sentiamo altre due? Other questions, because I would like to hear a couple of other questions so our panelists can reply to everything. Okay, it's over there at the center.
Hi, I'll talk in English.
Thank you very much. That's very kind of you.
I'll first introduce myself. I'm Nela Milošević, and I actually have a very international experience in education from Hong Kong, US, and actually a year at Bocconi. And now I'm assistant professor at the University of Donja Gorica. And I would like to express extreme excitement to be here at such an event because I think that this promotion of internationalization of education is very important, and I don't think we have enough of these events in Montenegro. I would like to pose questions to both guests. First of all, to Mrs. Professor Pejanović-Jurišić. As you said, you are trying to bring back experienced, internationally educated individuals back to your university. And I really applaud those efforts because I think that, and this is what I would suggest to all young people, is to get some international perspective, to get some international education, but to not forget their roots, their home, and to preferably bring that experience back home because other people, other students tomorrow can benefit from that ripple effect of their experience. So my question would be, do you have any systematic way, or is that just to say individual contacts, the way that you mentioned briefly, those incentives of bringing those individuals back, which Professor Verona also mentioned with more systematic, basically on the country level, those incentives. The question for Professor Verona would be about internationalization of faculties at universities. Basically, my impression is that while in the US, students, and from high school students, are very encouraged to go to college and university across the country. So say somebody born in Boston can go to Harvard, but usually a bright student from Boston chooses to go to California, to Stanford, across the country, to get some experience away from home, even if in home state he has an amazing university. And then when he graduates from that university, he goes for PhD to a university B somewhere else, and then for teaching he goes to university C. He doesn't stay at the same university, and that's very encouraged, or actually I would say it's discouraged to stay at the same university from studying to master's to PhD to teaching. I don't see that much in Europe in general, in Italy as well. I would say that, well, at least when I was a student, maybe that wasn't the case that much. And my question is, do you have a system, a way, or work plan on internationalizing your faculty in ways that, okay, your faculty is very internationally experienced in the sense that they all spent some years abroad or as a visiting scholars, etc. But I'm more saying if you have a certain percentage of faculty that didn't get the degree at Bocconi but came to work at Bocconi. So thank you, that would be all.
Thank you very much. Nella, she looks like a student, but she's a professor. Okay, another question, and I think that for now we'll try to answer.
Yes. So I'll be very short and brief. Question for Bocconi University: are there still some technology that makes us available to follow these courses online? Because we know that some universities in the United States, they have their courses online on YouTube, on some platforms. Most of them are even for free. So my question is this available to do with Bocconi? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would let our panelists answer as they want.
Okay, then we'll answer, I suppose, on the questions. I
yes.
mean, the comments are at the personal level and they could be discussed wherever. Anyway, when it comes to the issue I mentioned, and we will agree very important for the all universities, and not only for the universities, for the country as such, to find a way how to attract the people to come back. I do know that generally our kids and young people who go abroad to get education are very willing to come back. When it comes to the researchers, it's a little bit more difficult, because when they once start in the environment which is offering them greater possibilities, then it could be, in some senses, considered suicidal to leave everything and come somewhere and start from the level which is much lower. And that is the fact. We do need a systematic approach, which there is none. We do need a kind of encouragement and incentives for these people, young, not only the young ones. What we are doing at specifically our research, which is related with ICT at the University of Montenegro, is the orientation we did towards the European funding. So we are trying ourselves, and I think that we managed to place ourselves very well in that European research area, and we are managing to get European funding for a number of research projects. And that is the way how you can give an incentive to experienced researcher to come back. So this is the way we are doing that at the moment, waiting for some more sustainable mechanism which should be designed by, of course, not only the government, but with the participation of all of us who are having the experience and know what are the final targets of such a process.
Strategic management of knowledge and resources on a country level.
That is definitely necessary at the country level.
If I'm allowed to add a comment, a country as well as a business, as a company, can survive very easily without democracy, but cannot survive without meritocracy, without the possibility to recognize and to acknowledge special contribution and skills and to nurture that part.
Well, I wouldn't just like that say that democracy is not important.
Okay.
You can't have the right environment to assess the merits of everyone and to develop if the environment is not of that kind. I mean, we are having other examples on other places which are proving that.
Professor Verona.
So I had, first of all, a question on internationalization of the faculty. I think we lived 3 waves in terms of internationalization of the faculty. The first one, in which, as I said, we try to provide strong incentives, internal incentives, and then, of course, laying also these external incentives that the Italian system could give us to attract, the best Italians in top universities in the world. And this was the easy start because it was very hard to start up front, of course, with the international people that did not know Italy or the environment that they could get at Bocconi, particularly because in the 90s and I would say even at the beginning of the new millennium, our reputation in terms of research was not that good as it is today. It was good in economics, but was not good at all in management, was not good at all in legal studies, and therefore, so we had to create momentum on different parts. There was a second moment in which we started having lots, and by the way, at the time, most of the professors that did career at Bocconi, in addition to this external wave of Italians abroad, were from Bocconi, so we had internal path of career. Then there was a second moment in which we started investing a lot in these visiting professor programs, in which we started having also these international professor, independently, top professor, but international in terms of passport with respect to Italy, in which they started to engage in long exchanging and research projects with the local community. And this was very good to create momentum in terms of reputation of the things that we could do at Bocconi. And at that time, we also introduced a rule according to which basically you could not do a fully internal career at Bocconi, which is exactly what you mentioned before. So typically there is this gentleman agreement among international schools for which if you take a PhD from a school, the schools can't hire you as an assistant professor, but you have to go on the market. And so this was a very important decision, a very strong decision, by the way. Politically, it was very complicated to also have it passed by the faculty council because many professors did not want it, but we could have the majority, minimal majority at the time. And now there is the third wave, the third moment, in which, again, we have this perfectly fluid system in which what counts is your publications. You do career according to the number of citations, the number of publications in top journals. It doesn't matter if you come from Bocconi or come from the University of Montenegro. What matters is the result that you bring to the table. And today, I think that, I'm very proud because we are still have a stock of Italians, extremely good because they PhD from, we have, just to give you numbers, 300 professors at Bocconi, 200 and something of them have PhD from the top schools in the world. So far, only 70 of them have an international passport, but it's about 1/4 of the population, which is very good. And so many of them are Canadians, are English, are Australians, are from different parts of the world and do top-notch research in their respective field. But it's a journey. So going back to the point that was made before, it's a journey, and let me play the part of the economist all the times, having a background in economics, so incentives are crucial. Because if you want to move, and incentives doesn't mean compensation, by the way, because those who decided to do research, they know very well that they will never make as much as money as any manager in the world. And this is true also in the US, where they're super well paid. But, the best, the most important dean of a leading school earns much less than the best CEOs of the local community. So in general, people that decided to engage in research and become a professor do not see compensation as the most important thing, but the quality of the environment and the teamwork with your research assistant and so on and so forth. So when I talk about incentives, don't misunderstand me. I don't mean, money. Money then are important because in order to create the infrastructure, you need also, of course, service for these professors. But it's not the only important thing.
Do you remember there's another question?
Second question, very briefly. So all our courses today, because of what I said before, so no more knowledge translators, professors as knowledge translators, but professors as consultant in skill development. All of our courses have an online part. We have, from the bachelor to the executive courses we do with our business school. So basically, we have a strong platform, which is Blackboard, that we use in order to have everything is online today. So we have chats, so you go back at home after the face-to-face course you had in the classroom, and there is a chat, and there are clips there, and so on and so forth. There's always an online part. Having only online initiatives is something we have debated, and we have decided to follow only for these massive online open courses. We have embraced the most important platform. There are two platforms. The most important is Coursera, and so far we have 7 courses there. Some of them are very cool, by the way. One is in the marketing of food. It's a beautiful course in the marketing of food and beverage. And it's shot, like a film within different companies, from Barilla to many other companies we have in the Food Valley in Italy. And it's 9 modules. There is a course in the fashion business, which is one of the top in Coursera, by the way. But we have decided that these are just flagship courses to let the name of Bocconi spread around the world. But we don't believe in only online education, because if we want to develop skills, at the end there must be some face-to-face contact, which we provide at home.
Okay, we maybe still have time for just 1 or 2 questions maximum. Are there further questions for our panelists? Ok. No, ha già fatto una domanda. Le chiedo scusa. Ci sono troppe persone qui per... Ok, at the end, how can we wrap up this set of very important information that we've received? Maybe there's one more thing that I would like to ask that's not being asked up to this moment. We've mentioned the ICT technology, but what are the other industry areas that young people should watch towards? Where's the next thing, in your opinion? Okay, Professor Jurisic said ICT is here. What's next?
Well, it's difficult to say. I do believe that everything we are talking about now and we are used to will be the next thing as well, but in a different way. So if we are talking about different areas, sectors, and things like that, so marketing, finances, economics, legal things, and everything, but everything is changing the way how it will be further on developed and how the people will fit within the necessary operations there. So I'm not talking about ICT just in the sense of a separate area where we are contributing, but I'm talking about ICT that you are all using.
Yes.
So from that point, you've got to be aware of, in economics, the professor said, data are necessary. So you've got to be able to operate, manipulate with data in the right way. There is a number of those software tools which are helping to the people to work their business nowadays. So they are not doing it anymore like it was done some 15 years ago. So the next thing will be there, for example, artificial intelligence. But on the other side, what is my advice, and I think there is more and more people which are talking about that we've got to be very resilient to that fears which are raising around about these things like, I don't know, big data, artificial intelligence, and the things like that, claiming that, that will be meaning that all of us will not be needed anymore. I don't believe in that kind of thinking. And I do believe that there is a lot of work for all of us in this area, but it will be the different work.
It will be
and we've got to be ready for that. And our responsibility is to prepare the young people to be ready for that, because that will be first their responsibility. We will be there on side. We did what we did by now, and we now can transmit our experiences, do exchanges, help them with the way how they are approaching the problems, and I'm sure that they will be well prepared only if the environment is created for them to flourish further on.
Great. Professor Verona?
Yeah, I think that, again, I also think about information and communication technologies not as a sector, but as, they call it today, the fourth industrial revolution. So a technology which enables, you know, all the sectors, so it's more horizontal. That's why I say that it's so much important engaging in these kind of activities. Another thing which is probably transversal, which cuts across many sectors, and that everybody's been talking about for many years now, but now it's becoming more and more clear and more evident what you can do factually, is all the world of sustainability. So the fact that it's clear that, you know, the pollution, energy, all these challenges that characterize the planet Earth are all very important challenges. And so, again, if you guys have ideas in developing, so we're talking about startups, innovation in the field of sustainability, I think that, you know, that could be a beautiful way to go for the future, because this is for sure something which become more and more important in the years to come.
Thank you very much. Okay, we've heard about industry areas, but we've heard also about psychological or emotional skills, such as character skills that might be important for the future to navigate, as I said before, navigate the seas of future. We've also heard about the uncertainty, about the mixing of different areas that are melting into each other, and that the death of distances is making global and local events occurring at the same time and penetrating each other. Now, I hope that all this will give at least a small contribution, especially to the young people, in order to orient themselves in their present and future decisions. And at the end, I was really proud to be here on this stage, and I would like, together with you, with a big applause, to say thanks to our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.